The first thing you want to do before you start tacking and putting everything together is you want to do a fit up. You want to make sure that all of your corner pieces are square, everything's level and flush, and also your dimensions are correct. So typically what I do is I measure about a couple of inches in from the outer edge of each frame and make sure my measurements are exactly the same. Those are spot on, so I'm good there. And of course, if I come over to here, make sure that these are the same as well. Perfect. So next thing you would do is make sure everything is square to your liking. So that's square, pretty square there. Spot on, and then last but not least, and that's spot on. Now, if you, depending on your tolerances, if you had any wiggle in there, or if it's not going in, that means one of the members is too long or too short, and you would have to make adjustments to the other matching member to make sure that everything fits up nicely and square. Everything's good here, we're good to go. We don't have to make any adjustments. Now, the first technique we're going to use to tack these together is just a simple clamping technique. Now, the number one thing that you want when you're making a flat frame, is you want a nice flat surface to work on. Usually layout tables that have clamping mechanisms put inside of it are pretty expensive. It's not the typical thing you would see a hobbyist have. So if you go to any mill or metal dealer, get yourself a piece of 3 foot by 3 foot 1/4 inch plate. Typically that's going to be pretty flat, and you can work with that because as long as this is nice and flat, this is just a piece of 1/4 inch hot roll steel that you can make a layout table for. So our corners match up exactly to the inside edge there. That fillet weld right there, if you are going to weld it, that's what you would want to match up. Then of course you would want to check and make sure it's nice and square. So as soon as you got that, as long as your table is flat and your members sit flatly on that, make sure there's nothing underneath, like any spatter that may have fused to the table. You got to grind that off. Make sure that it's not twisting, it's not pivoting over spatter, over any material that may have fallen on the piece or onto the table to make a variation in that angle. So this is pretty flat. You can see that we have a nice flat seam there. Our corner joint is nice and square. So what we want to do is clamp it to the table in 2 places. Now you can see that I have come off the table a little bit. Okay, my corner is off the table. I can see light through this side. You can see my finger right there, because I want to be able to access everything. I want to be able to tack everything into place. Now, when you are tacking, just like putting a tire on a car, you want to go furthest distance away from the last point of heat. Okay, so if you begin your tacking on the outside corner here, go 1, and you want to go all the way down to 2, and then out 3, and then 4. Okay, so essentially when you're putting a tire on a car, you're not going in a circle. You need to distribute the pressure around that hub so you get a nice even fit. Same thing, we want to prevent distortion and the material moving out of position while we're tacking and welding. So that's what we're gonna do. I am not going to weld the inside fillet weld completely. I'm gonna put a bedding in mine. So I'm only putting 1 tack down below, and then I'm gonna come up here, 1 tack, and then I'm gonna have a tack at the top because I am welding this top butt joint here. All right, so we have all of our material prepped and ready to go. Every weld area is nice and shiny. All of our lengths, opposite members are matching. So it's time to make our frame for the top. Now, we are gonna show you 4 different ways of making a good corner. So we're going from just using clamps and a square, and then we're gonna clamp our corners down 1 by 1. You can also use corner magnets as well. And then this one here, this is actually creating a corner jig. Now, if you're wanting to get really accurate and a lot of speed involved, this is a little bit more of an expensive way to go about things, but this is actually a 3-axis clamp. This actually allows you to put all 3 members into a corner right away and tack it up. We're gonna start with this one down here, which is gonna give you a better idea of the range you can work in. This is gonna be the least expensive way to do it, but your degree of accuracy actually climbs as you move toward this guy right here. So let's get started with just clamping each corner down one at a time and then using a square to match it up. So what we want to do, grab your F clamps or C clamps, whatever clamps you have, that's fine, and make sure you get that, oopsie, I pushed it out of position. So clamp down one first. Clamp down one first, get that really secure, square it up again, make sure that's nice and even where you want it, make sure it's square, and then clamp this guy into place as well. So those aren't going anywhere. Now, just make sure that it didn't move out of position after you have clamped. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna fire up our MIG welder, we're gonna get all of our gear on, and then we're just gonna tack in that same pattern. Down low, up high, down low, up high on the inside. All right, here we go. We wanna go through our checklist. We wanna start from the back of the machine, working our way forward to the workpiece to make sure our settings are correct. We are using 14 gauge square tube. You're gonna wanna set your machine to whatever you are welding on. Maybe you're welding on 1/8 of an inch square tube. It's entirely up to the thickness of the material. But turn your gas on, turn your machine on. We're gonna set ours a little higher than 14 gauge. Now, here's a little tip. This stuff, this is anti-spatter spray. This won't allow spatter to stick to your workpiece or your work table while you're using a MIG. Of course, if you're using a TIG process, if you're using a TIG system, you won't need this, but this is nice because what happens, you can spray it around your area and on the workpiece. It's not gonna affect your weld, but at the same time, you're not gonna have spatter build up on your workpiece or your work table. So we're gonna fire it up. We're gonna go through our checklist real quick. We're 14 gauge, we're already set. Make sure your work clamp is connected to your work table or the workpiece itself. And then we're gonna get going. We're gonna start by tacking on this outer, the outer portion of this corner and then the lower. We're gonna go up, then down. So cover. And there you have it. So when you are tacking, you want to move fairly quickly to try to keep the distortion at a minimum so it doesn't warp out of position, and also to assist the clamps from keeping it in that position. So that's how it would work with this particular method of setting up a corner. Now we're going to welding magnets, more specifically corner magnets. Now corner magnets are a very inexpensive way to make a good 90-degree corner. As you can see, this is 90 degrees, this is 45 or 132.5, this is parallel. So they have a lot of capability. You can use 4 of these and connect all 4 corners at one time. You will want to try to clamp down your members as much as you can, but for the most part, these are pretty versatile. Now the finer points of them, as they hang out in a metal shop, they're going to develop a lot of metal dust. Of course, that metal dust is magnetic. So when you are putting this onto your material and you do want a true 90-degree angle, you want to make sure you remove that metal dust first before you put it into your corner. Now, sometimes you get a little metal dust inside there when you're trying to make your corner. So it's always a good idea to check for square even though your corner magnet is in there. You don't know what might be inside there making it bulge out or what have you. So we're only gonna do one corner with a corner magnet. As you can see, this is the underside of my table. I wanna make sure that the tack on the inside part is on the bottom because I'm gonna be putting a bedding in to receive wood. So I'm gonna tack, once again, low corner outside, up here inside, and then my last one's gonna be right on the corner there. So going through my checklist once again, firing up my machine. Oh, I want a little spatter spray. I want to make sure spatter doesn't connect to my piece or to my magnet or around it. There we go. All right, so I'm going to start from the outside lower corner. Cover. And there you have it. Take that out and you should be good to go. But after you tack, what you want to do is you want to make sure after you tack that stayed 90 degrees. Jigs are a great way to do a corner clamp, but at the same time they're also a great way if you're going to do a lot of the same frame to make the same frame consistently, because basically what you're doing is dropping it into the form that's already created that you've measured out. So when you're making just a simple corner jig, what we can do is take any two pieces of practically the same square bar material or tube material and make a jig out of it. All we have to do is just weld it to the table, making sure that it creates a 90-degree angle. How we're gonna do this is just fit it right up against there like so, and then what we're gonna do is weld this to the table first, this particular piece. So we can remove this, clamp this down into position that we want. All right, so we'll just, doesn't really matter what angle that's at as long as that's a 90 degree from what other member that we're creating. So, cover. Cover. All right. Now, after we're done tacking that onto our table, our welding table, what we can do is we can take a square and square it right up to this angle here. Let's say we just want to have a 3-inch gap between our very corner and our jig piece, and then we can put this one right at that very corner and then just tack it into place. So cover up. So after these pieces are done being tacked into place, you want to square them up, make sure they're squares on both the inside and the outside. That's just to double check your work. And then you have a perfectly good angle, 90-degree square to tack these guys into. And you also left enough of a gap where you can get the nozzle of your welder inside there. So what we can do now is take our clamps, clamp these into position like so. There's one. And oops, move just a hair. Now that should be perfectly 90 degrees. So what we're gonna do, same tack pattern. We're gonna go bottom, outside, inside, bottom, outside here, and then we're done. So cover. What's great about this system is this would allow you to make 4 corners where you have 2 clamps per corner restricting the movement. So if you wanted to make a lot of this particular frame, this would be the way you would want to go, as long as you had a level surface big enough to accommodate that frame. this is probably the direction you're going to want to go. Jigs will always produce the same thing over and over again as long as the pieces that you have cut are correct to the frame. Okay. Corner clamps. So there's two basic types of corner clamps. You have a corner clamp that has two members, 2-axis corner clamp, and then there's this guy. This guy is a 3-axis clamp. It has 2 clamps on it to allow us to attach 3 members at a time, hence the name 3-axis clamp. So we have our 90-degree corner for our frame already in here, but what this allows us to do is we get to take a leg and throw it right in there, clamp it in, and tack it all together in one shot. So it's pretty nice. So one thing you want to do when you're using a 3-axis clamp or a corner clamp, know the distance from the flat surface here where the piece that one of the members goes into to your table. This one happens to be 1 inch. So I have 1-inch spacers on either side of my frame to make sure my entire frame stays level. So now that it's in there, I want to make sure this is clamped. This is already clamped into place, so that's perfect 90-degree. And then what we're going to do is drop this guy down, and this has a quick release. So if you just press this button, push it in like so, and then go like so, turn it until it's nice and firm in there. Now, when you're checking your corner, you want to make sure that the clamp kept your members nice and flush on the outside of your corner. So you have 2 butt joints back here. You want to make sure those 2 butt joints are fitting evenly. So you could take any flat or straight edge, line it up, make sure that it is nice and flat. Both of these are, so we're good to go. Now, when you're tacking, what you want to do is you want to tack where all 3 of these members connect first. That is this inside corner here. As you can see, here's the 2 flat frame members, and here's the vertical member. So you would want to put a nice tack right there first, and then the second one is the exact outer portion of that second, and then go side to side for your legs. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, or 3, 4, either side. It doesn't matter too much, but you just want to make sure you secure all 3 pieces together first before moving on. Then I will put a tack on the lower corner of those pieces as well, just to make sure the frame is secured in place. Now, we're already set for 14 gauge tacking. We're ready to go with our MIG welder. I'm gonna add just a little bit of spray to make sure this doesn't get on my table nor on my piece, and then we're good to go. So, put on the protective gear, fire up your machine. First tack is gonna be the inside joint where all 3 of those members connect. So, cover. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. Good.